Okay, so we fed our starter. Looks really good. We let it sit overnight. Now we need about 200 grams, which is probably right around a cup, maybe a cup and a quarter of the starter. It wouldn't really hurt to put more starter in than you probably need. So I probably err on the side of more rather than less. So that's 200 grams of our starter, about a cup and a quarter. And now I've got some filtered water, room temperature. Let's measure it out. So typically I use the scales, but if I was measuring, it should be 350. So let's see what 350 looks like in cups. Here's 2 cups. Probably, I'd say a cup and 3/4 water would be about 350. So let's call it a cup and 3/4. And then as far as flour goes, we need 500 grams of bread flour. So let's see about how much that would be in cups today. So put the starter in, the water in. Now it's time for flour. Lots and lots and lots of flour. I feel bad for anyone with a gluten allergy coming into this house. Okay, there's 2 cups of flour. So probably about 4 cups total, I'm guessing, to hit that 200 and that 500 gram mark. So 4 cups of flour. Now what I'm doing is doing about, I'm getting flour everywhere. I'm doing about 90% bread flour, and then a handful of wheat flour. There we go, to get to my 500. And then I'm gonna put just a drop of honey into this. I should have opened my honey before I started. Come on, honey, open up. Drop of honey. Boop. There we go. And then I'm gonna mix that up. It should be pretty wet. So before we add the salt, we're gonna let all of this rest for about, because it's a cold day, I'm gonna let it actually rest for an hour. Then I'll add the salt and then I'll start the folding. But you can see it's coming together and it's pretty shaggy in the beginning. And by the time I mix it all up, I probably should not do that on the scale. No, I have actually knocked that whole thing down the counter before. That is tragic when you do that. Okay, this is holding together. I'm gonna scrape some of this flour from around the edge of the bowl. Hopefully I'm not making you too dizzy here. Okay, that looks pretty good. I don't want it too dry for sure. And that's gonna keep absorbing as we go. So if I were to pick it up, it'd still stick to the dough, the bowl I should say, and you see this kind of trying to hold together. That's a good consistency. Good and sticky, a bit like a biscuit. Maybe just wetter than a biscuit. Let's call it that. Okay, then we'll add the salt in an hour. So we let our dough rest, and now we're gonna go in with 11 grams of salt, sea salt. So let's see what 11 grams looks like. This is 1 teaspoon. Looks like it's gonna be a little scooch more than 2 teaspoons. So let's call it, yeah, 2 teaspoons of salt. And then we're gonna cover the bottom of a bowl with olive oil, probably a good 2 tablespoons. And then I'm gonna rub all of that around. And then because my hand is nice and oily, then when I go to pick up the bread, I'm gonna twist it around so I make sure I get the bread off the sides. I've got the salt in there. I'm just gonna work the salt a little bit into the bread, and because my hands have a little oil, it's not gonna stick as bad. I'm just sort of slapping it around, working that salt in there. I'm gonna bring it onto the counter, and it's not that we're kneading it, we're really just slapping it. And you can see with just the rest that it's actually holding together pretty well. That's what I like to see. Okay, we're gonna slap that into the bowl with the olive oil. We're gonna flip it, put olive oil all around, cover it with some plastic wrap, and then we'll come back to it in 30 minutes. Okay, we let it rest for about 30 minutes in a nice warm spot. I put some water on my fingers. I'm just gonna pinch the side and pull it in. And you can already see some of the gluten forming. And I'll pinch another side and pull it in. And I'll pinch the bottom, pull it over, and then the other side and pull it in. And I'm basically pulling the 4 corners. I'm gonna give that a little tug, scoot the seams onto the bottom, and then put the plastic wrap back on top and wait another 30 minutes. Every time you fold it, you need to cover it back up with plastic wrap and put it in a warm place. We're gonna do that 4 times. Okay, this is gonna be our second time. We waited 30 minutes. We're gonna pinch the 4 corners here. Pull that all in and flip it over and wait another 30 minutes. Okay, last fold. Again, going for the 4 corners, pinch and pull, pinch and pull, pinch and pull. And you can see how nice and firm it is. It's gonna sit one more time and then we'll be ready to shape it up. Okay, so our dough is ready. Bounces back when you press it. And we have rice flour. So we're putting it all into the refrigerator overnight. So we have a tea towel, a bowl, and rice flour works the best. You can use regular all-purpose flour for this, but it's gonna stick. If we sprinkle rice flour into this bowl, I can get a handful of rice flour. We don't need that much. It's maybe just a couple tablespoons, and we sprinkle it all around. And I'm just gonna keep some of the rice flour on my hand. Now I'm gonna try to do this one-handed. It would work better with 2 hands, but I'm holding this for you on the other hand. I'm gonna pull the dough out of the bowl, and I'm gonna pull the sides into the center. So what we're doing is basically closing up the bottom end. And I wanna pull it in until it's good and tense. So I'm almost getting a bit of a knot here, and I'm pulling that tight, tight, tight on a floured surface, just using my countertop. Now, in a minute, I'm gonna use 2 hands, but we basically drag this across the counter and we roll that bottom a little so it gets tight, and we drag it, and we're creating tightness across the surface. So we drag and we pull from underneath, getting it nice and tight. And pull. And you'll feel it when it gets really tight. And we're swirling it under. I'm kind of cupping it a little bit, pulling it around, because I want that back end to not have these holes. All right, once I have it good and tight. I'm gonna roll it in a little more flour so it doesn't stick to the surface. And of course I could add more flour if I wanted to. And once I have it tight enough, I'm gonna flip it into this bowl and cover it up. Now it's time to pop it into the fridge overnight or for 8 hours, and then it's time to bake. Okay, I'm preheating the oven to 480, and there's a pan of water on the bottom, and I have a rack above it. I'll show you really quick. And that steam is gonna help cook our bread. The minute I turned on the oven, I took my dough out from last night. Perfect. I have a pan ready to go and some cornmeal. So we have to sprinkle cornmeal on the bottom of the pan. Doesn't need to be super thick, it's just so it doesn't stick. And then we're going to pop this on top of this super fast and use a bread knife to slice the top. Not deep, just enough to let some of the steam out while the bread is cooking. So give me just a minute. There. Put it on. I'm gonna go 2 slices. I could put more. I'm gonna bring the bread into the oven and set a timer for 20 minutes. Okay, it's been 20 minutes and I reduced it from 480 to 410. And then I waited 10 minutes more at 410. I'm looking at it. I'm gonna take it out, flip it over, and let the bottom
cook it
side
another
cook a
10
little
minutes. The total
more.
cooking
I
time
flipped
for
it
your
over,
bread
popped it
should
in the
be
oven.
40 minutes
I'm
total.
just gonna tap it. Sounds hollow. Perfect. I'm gonna brush a little bit of the cornmeal off the bottom. You could also use, what do they call Italian cornmeal? But regular old cornmeal is fine and way cheaper. And that is our beautiful bread. Done.